بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. General will. General will is an important conception or concept in modern moral philosophy and also in political philosophy. So it's important to get grip on this concept. Um, it's a bit tricky concept, and it's important for Rousseau's philosophy as well as Kant's philosophy for understanding democracy as well as for understanding capitalism. So this is a dictionary entry. I'm just reading in order to just use it to clear my mind on the concept. We'll look at some other entries as well. The fundamental claim for general will is that the members of political community as members share a public or general interest or good which is for the benefit of them all and should be put before private interest. The fundamental claim for the general will is that it's a private interest. So there are a few concepts there. Let us look at them. So the concept of general will is fundamentally treated as a political concept here because it belongs to the will of political community. And as a historical background, what general will replaces is very important as well. What it replaces is the will of God, obviously. The will of God was important. Whatever the will of God was important political concept in pre-modern Europe, even early modern Europe. And what replaces the will of God is the general will. And this general will is the will of the community, political community. And what does a political community wills? It doesn't will anything. Its general will is determined by a conception of human being and their place in this world. And that conception is, once you have rejected the will of God in the historical context, that conception is a conception of a capitalist being or homo economics, whose basic desire and duty is to fulfill his or her desires. So the will of every human being is to will their desires. And will of a political community is to will their communal desire. So that's the context. And this fulfillment of desire is what interest is. And interest can be divided into a private interest, and public interest. Your private interest is how to best fulfill your desires. The purpose of politics is ultimately to fulfill every individual's private interest. But there's debate about how best to do this so that the greatest number and numbers of people fulfill their private interests. And that's where utilitarianism and its different uh, act utilitarianism, rule utilitarianism, and utilitarianism is a public policy tool, and one of the main theories of economics, because it tries to come up with mechanism through which private interest can be combined in such a way that in public pursuits we can advocate for policies which will fulfill the greatest number of desires of the greatest number of people. Okay. In this context, the thing to remember is that general will aims for public interest, the interests um, of private interest as a whole. But crucial in this aspect is that public interest is not a combination of or sum total of private interests. So in that sense, it is different from act utilitarianism and closer to rule utilitarianism. And that's why ultimately, the Kantian position and Russian position is not very different from rule utilitarianism. That's why the economics of capitalism and its political system, democracy, can be justified equally, similarly on the basis of rule utilitarianism as well as Kantianism. There's no fundamental difference between rule utilitarianism and Kantianism. Anyway, so public interest is not the sum total of private interest. That's where general will comes. The general will is not the addition, sum total of private wills. General will is what is the true interests of human beings or group of human beings in general, given their desire to maximize their private interests, or to maximize the fulfillment of their private desires. So general will claims that it's not always. Not always the addition of private interest. It is rather what is the true interest of public community. In that sense, we can say that, and there are two methods for that. One is Rousseau's method, and the other is Kant's method. Kant and Rousseau. And Kant's method is universalizability. So if you can universalize any will or any interest, then it is the true interest of the community. For Rousseau, the true interest of the community or general will is to be discovered through public mobilization, total public mobilization, and through that emotional upheaval, and they go to legislate. So when they legislate in that environment again and again, they will vote for general interest. But the thing to remember is that general interest is equal to what is rational, rationality, what is rational policy, given that everybody wants to maximize their private interests or their desires and their fulfillment. And ultimately what replaces Kant's, what triumphs is Kant's idea and its technical formation. So ultimately people realize that, or come to believe that it's experts, because experts are the custodians of rationality. So they will decide what policies are the best for maximizing the public interest or the sum total of private interests. So you get economists and policy analysts and bureaucracy and a cabal of bureaucracy and universities which decides what are the best policies. So technocracy. So there's no there's no contradiction between democracy and technocracy. Because ultimately, Rousseau's ideas of mobilizing people for mass legislation fails because people are not capable of that. So, and Kant's ideas win. Kant's idea of universalizability, which is what is the most rational method to know what policies are the best policies for preserving public interest. So experts dominate all mature democracies. So I think I think probably we said all that was needed to be said in this context, but we'll just read this short entry. So the fundamental claim for general will is that the members of the political community as members share a public or general interest or good which is for the benefit of them all. So interest and good are the same thing, and the basic thing is so public and private. And other thing is that general interest in this conception is not the sum total of private interest. When the members put the general good first, they are willing the general will of their community. The general will of the community is decided by, according to Rousseau, mass public legislation, according to Kant, by universalizability, in which the practical form is expertise. So who knows what is general will? The experts, public policy analysts, economists, sociologists, etc. The claim was given a special and influential shape by Rousseau. He produced a comprehensive theory of the legitimacy of the states and of government revolving around the general will. So governments are legitimate because they are backed by general will. So then you get two different theories. Those people who think that general will is the sum total of all will, they go for more participatory democracy. The people who win the day is that general will is actually the will as determined by and discovered by experts. So that's why democracy remains democracy, and the people's collective will become just the rubber stamp on that. And that's important for legitimacy, but the actual general will is discovered by experts. So you get a technocracy which is rubber stamped by democracy. So that's what we have today. So that's why there's no contradiction in their mind when they say that, we know what people want. Some contend this solves the central problem of political philosophy, how the individual can both be obliged to obey the state's law and be free. Because Rousseau was very important in that, because Rousseau said that there's no contradiction between, and Kant got this idea from him as well, that there's no contradiction between freedom and authority. That's another important concept. There's no contradiction between freedom and authority because it's self-legislation, as Kant called it, autonomy. Because people, when they're following laws, they are actually following their own will, because laws are legislated by people. But they are obeying general will. Although if general will is determined by experts, that becomes contentious. But the answer to that is that, even if they're following expert, they're following their own will, because experts know what is their actual will, their best interest, etc. So if laws are made by the general will aimed at the common good and expressed by all the citizens, the laws must be in accordance with the public interest, and therefore in the interest of each, and each is obliged to the law, yet free because they are its author. It's like self-discipline. So you are disciplining yourself, so you are still free because you are only obeying your own will, nobody else's will. Rousseau's formulation has been much criticized by others. I found it entirely true, essentially true, and have variously adapted it. And the Kantian version is one of the most influential one in this regard, in both liberal version and social democratic versions, etc. Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وصلى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وأزواجه أجمعين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في غزة وفي فلسطين كلها وفي اليمن وفي لبنان وفي إيران وفي أفغانستان وفي كل مكان. اللهم فرج عنا وعن إخواننا في غزة. اللهم نفس كربنا وكرب من ثبت أقدامنا وأقدامنا بهم يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم